Hello, I'm John Eagles, a retired psychiatrist who has an interest in eating problems, and I helped in the design of the Temple V weight management and lifestyle modulation program. The importance of salt in our health and our weight is often underestimated. So this webinar looks at some of the implications of the amount of salt we consume in our diets. Salt is sodium chloride. We need sodium for fluid balance, for nerve function, and for muscle function. Chloride helps to regulate blood pressure and acid levels in our blood. Without sodium, our nerves and muscles, and most notably our heart, could not function. But humans evolved on the equivalent of a wee pinch of salt per day. Only since salt was found to help in preserving food has our consumption skyrocketed. The World Health Organization recommends up to 5 grams of salt per day. The UK government a more generous 6 grams per day. But most of us consume way above these safe limits, as you can see on the slide. And this is just an average. So for every person having 5 grams, there is someone consuming about 15 grams of salt. In the Western world, we eat a lot of processed food, and that is where most of our salt comes from. Salt makes bland food tastier. The recent move towards vegan diets is to be applauded, but ready-made vegan meals are among the worst offenders, some containing more than our entire advised daily maximum. Several of the other main culprits are shown on the slide. You might think meat is natural, but it is often injected with salt to keep it fresher for longer and to improve the texture. Bread and cereals, cornflakes are surprisingly one of the worst, often have a lot of salt. Stock cubes and gravy, granules have loads. One OXO beef cube has 1.8 grams of salt. If you are not cooking with fresh ingredients, check the food labels. Green signals low salt, amber is for medium, and red means high. Perhaps obviously, with takeaway meals, you have no control over the salt content. High salt diets are generally very bad for us. The World Health Organization says that reducing salt intake is the single factor that would most benefit worldwide health. The main reason for this is due to the effect of salt, specifically the sodium in salt, on blood pressure, and high blood pressure is the major cause of death in the world due to its leading to heart attacks and to strokes. There is a lot of evidence that high sodium diets are associated with higher rates of cardiovascular disease and strokes, and that reducing salt intake improves your risk of suffering from these conditions. High salt diets reduce your resistance to infection, and if you do get a virus, and COVID-19 has highlighted this recently, they can make the outcome more severe. Autoimmune diseases like colitis are more likely. There is suggestive evidence linking high salt diets with various cancers, and there's good evidence that they are linked specifically with stomach cancer. So what about the links between salt and weight? It has been known for some time that heavy people consume more salt, and it was rather assumed that overweight people simply consume more food and also made less healthy, high-salt food choices. Attention then focused on the association between salt and thirst, in that overweight children and adults who ate too much salt were found to consume more sugar-sweetened or alcoholic drinks. And that's why some pubs give you free salted peanuts. Over recent years, sophisticated studies have accurately measured salt consumption through looking at 24-hour output of urinary sodium. and they have found that salt intake is an independent risk factor for obesity, regardless of one's calorie intake. A large American study found that for each additional 1 gram of salt intake, weight was 2.75 kilograms higher and waist measurement more than 2 centimeters larger. Another big study found that for every additional 1 gram of sodium consumed, the risk of obesity rose by 28%. These are striking findings. So what can we do to reduce our salt intake and become healthier and leaner? Perhaps obviously, wherever possible, we should be cooking with fresh ingredients. On the Temple V programme, the sachets are not fresh ingredients, but we have been careful to monitor the salt content, advising limits on any sachets with a higher salt content. Fruit and vegetables contain potassium, which helps to lower blood pressure. We should be using reduced sodium salt when we cook, since this contains around half the sodium content of standard table salt. Our taste buds actually regenerate every 10 days or so, and therefore it does not take long for them to acclimatise to lower salt diets. Within a fortnight, if we have been eating a high salt diet, we should not be missing it. So, to summarise, across the world we consume too much salt, largely due to the frequency with which we eat processed foods and takeaways. The World Health Organization have concluded that this is the riskiest thing we do health-wise, largely due to the effects on our blood pressure. And there is now good evidence that salt intake is directly linked to obesity. It's not rocket science to reduce our salt intake. We should all be doing it, and we can soon become accustomed to the new and subtle flavours of our less salty food. Thank you.